What's up, everybody? This is D Money with the CanesInSight Daily Podcast. Want to tell you about our good friends at Anijar and Levine Accident Attorneys. If you've been in a crash, someone you care about's been in a crash, you may be entitled to significant compensation. Don't go with a rookie. Go with somebody who knows the process, who has experts at every single stage of the process, who will treat you like family, who will make sure that you're protected, taken care of. Don't have to worry about anything except for getting the finest legal care and having your case handled by the absolute best. Take back control of your life. 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733. Also want to talk about my friends at Caneswear. You can go to the store at Davie, Football Heaven, or caneswear.com if you're not local. Get the absolute best in Miami Hurricanes gear, Miami Dolphins gear, Inter Miami, Florida Panthers, Miami Heat, Miami Marlins. You name it, they have it. Absolute best when it comes to Miami sports fans merchandise and the best staff in the business. Ask anybody, they'll tell you. But if you're not lucky enough to go to the store, go to caneswear.com. Everything is available there, the spot where Miami fans shop.
This episode of the CanesInsight podcast is brought to you by our friends at Sala Astorita & Cox, a boutique law firm focusing on securities regulatory matters, broker-dealer and investment advisor regulation, white-collar criminal defense, complex commercial litigation, and securities arbitration and litigation. The firm aggressively represents clients throughout the nation. Contact them now at 561-989-9080 or visit them online at salalaw.com.
It was another wild weekend at the Light. We're here to talk about it with the man who threw the 23rd perfect game in D1 baseball history. Miami Hurricanes great, Javi Salas. Javi, how you doing?
I'm good, D. Good to be back, man. Another series win for the Canes. It was a wild one this weekend, man. A little bit of everything this weekend at Mark Light.
It feels like a repeat of the show we did last week, right? We're disappointing midweek. Obviously, last week they won. This week they didn't, but scary midweek performance. And then beating a top 15 team in a tough series where the ball was flying out of the ballpark. I mean, it seems like, again, we're seeing some patterns with this team.
Right. And look, what we've talked about the last couple of weeks is a lot of these games are 50-50 games for the Canes, right? And what you see is an exciting brand of baseball, whether on the good side or bad side. Friday, 14-1, 14-2 game. I mean, the ball's flying out of the park at an exponential rate. First mercy rule game I've seen. Yep. I haven't been at a game where I was watching. I had no idea that the mercy rule was in play. Game ends after 7. Nice. You get out, explore Miami at a decent hour.
Got my kids home early
at 9 o'clock. So you see that Saturday, really, really well pitched game. 1-1, bottom of the 9th inning. Dorian Gonzalez with a walk-off blast to center field. And then Sunday, you get the opposite side of the coin where the Canes get mercy ruled themselves. One of those things where the wind was howling. Pete and I were in the stands yesterday with some friends of the program, Mike Rees and Cam Gorby as well. Balls flying out. Carolina hits 7 home runs, and they mercy rule the Canes. So a little bit of everything. Really exciting weekend though. A big time series win against the top 15.
Let me start with the starting pitching. Obviously, you're a starting pitcher. You can help me understand some of the ups and downs here. I thought really outstanding pitching performances on Friday and Saturday from Zeal and Rafe. I was there for Zeal. Complete game, again, with the mercy rule, 7 innings. He was throwing strikes, really competing out there. And then Rafe missing a lot of bats on Saturday. Should we expect kind of the up and downs from those two, or are they starting to round into form? What are you seeing with those guys?
Yeah, I think starting on Friday night with Gage, he looked the part, right? I think when you go into a Friday series, especially in the ACC, whether you're going to get a great performance or not, you want your guy to extend his outing and go deep into the game, preserve that bullpen. And we've seen, the Miami bullpen is definitely the weak link of this team right now. So Gage did a great job on Friday night. First 2 innings, I mean, he gets in and out. It looked like, 12 pitches, something like that, pitching to contact, getting the guys back into the dugout, getting that offense rolling. There was 1 inning that I really want to speak to. I think it was the 4th inning. Gage gets a bases loaded jam, gives up 1 run, but it was a beautiful job of a starting pitcher just mitigating damage. And Gage did a great job. It was a 5-0 game at that point. Gives up 1, offense gets back into the dugout, scores some more runs for him, and then he cruises the rest of the outing. And the same thing on Saturday. And Rafe's outing was a little bit different in the sense that there was a rain delay, something like a 35. He comes back. He comes back into the game. Had a little noise on set, but he comes back in, shuts these guys down. Unbelievable job by Rafe. And then you just kind of rope-a-dope. That's what he was doing against UNC. UNC is a really tough opponent. kept them off the base paths, kept them, at bay from scoring the big runs, kept his team in it. All of a sudden, you get a big blast in the ninth inning from Dorian Gonzalez to win the series. So those two guys have really looked apart on Friday and Saturday. Herrick Hernandez struggled a little bit on Sunday. The wind was blowing out. It was really, blowing out straight dead center field, give up a couple home runs. But again, it was a 5-4 game. The Canes had a chance, and then you bring in the bullpen, and unfortunately, the game got out of control there in the 5th and 6th innings.
So let's talk about the bullpen, good and bad, I thought, this weekend. Starting with the good, it looks like you might be finding that back end
Right.
with Robert, who's been good all year. Didn't have to work as hard this week as he did in prior weeks. Saw him on Saturday do a really great job. And then Walter's setting him up, getting him back, getting him rolling, getting, up to speed. Do you think that we found a setup man and a closer going forward for the rest of the year?
I certainly think so. What I saw on, Friday and Saturday from those two guys were, that's going to be the formula for the Canes, right? I said starting pitching has to get you to that 6th, 7th innings. If you can get 18 outs, you start getting, 19, 20 outs. All of a sudden, the game shortens up. You have Nick Robert at the end of the game, and, he's good for 3 to 5 outs. Who's going to be that bridge? We keep talking about it. Who's going to step up? We know who our 8th inning guy is. That's going to be Brian Walters. And I firmly believe that as he gets stronger, coming back from his Tommy John surgery, and look, Tommy John's another imperfect science, right? They always say, a year to 18 months and that 12 to 18 month period, there's a lot of up and downs. I think, earlier in the week, we saw him come in and throw, and his velo wasn't exactly the same. Saturday night, he comes in and looks, he looks the part again. He was throwing hard, good breaking ball for strikes. And then obviously we know what we have in Nick Robert. He's solidified himself as his team's closer. So at least from the, setup and closing role, I think we know what we have. It's just about getting to those guys. That's going to be the important part for this ball club going forward.
Now, shifting to the bad, as far as what we saw this past weekend, rest of the bullpen had some struggles. You mentioned these are young guys for the most part, starters in high school, making that adjustment. We're getting closer to the meat of ACC play, some road games coming up. What needs to happen with that pen?
Yeah, look, I think Coach Gutierrez and Coach Arteaga, they got their work cut out for them, trying to figure out with the pieces that they have. We have some guys on the shelf that are hurt, and I know there's some talk about those guys possibly, making their way back into the lineup in the next couple of weeks. But with what we have right now, it's certainly, a puzzle game, right? So I know Coach Gutierrez is definitely trying to figure out who can just go and get me outs, who can I trust consistently to get me outs. And right now, it's been a little bit of a, difficult situation. I know yesterday the game was close. It's 5-4. All of a sudden, in that 5th inning, leadoff walk gets on base. They bring in reliever Miles Caba. He walks in a run. The game just kind of spiraled out of control. And as a coach, you got to make sure you know what you have in your guys when you put them out there. And I think right now that middle relief is just a big gray area for the Canes. We've seen a lot of up and down performances. Guys who have come in and look great one day. The next day, it's it doesn't look the same. It looks much more difficult to get out. So what I expect is, yes, we're going to take these learning, it's a big learning curve for some of these young guys. What I said last week is these guys are used to being starting pitchers, especially the freshmen. They're in high school or starting pitchers. These are dirty innings. You're playing a desperate North Carolina team on Sunday, right? They've lost 2 games. They are playing with their hair on fire on Sunday. So you knew that was going to be, their approach going in. It's definitely a learning experience. Look, D, it's pitching is tough, man. You're the lonely man out there. There's no one there to save you. You gotta kind of figure your way out. I think one thing that we need to see going forward is just throwing strikes. We've seen the middle relief kind of struggle throwing a lot of balls and getting, behind in the count. And when you get behind in the count, these are a top 15 team, ACC powerhouse. They're gonna take advantage, and they did yesterday.
How much of this, again, from putting your player hat on, how much of this is adjusting to the team you have, the offense you have, meaning you might mention throwing strikes. I mean, these are not games where one run here, one run there kills you, right?
Right.
So how important is it to throw strikes when you know your offense is going to be able to put up a lot of points?
Yeah, look, and I think you're absolutely right. You hit the nail on the head that you have to know the personnel you have. And this is an offensive heavy team with good starting pitching, right? So it's like, hey, this is what we're good at. Let's figure out how to, steer the game in our direction. We saw it on Friday night, right? Like Friday night, we jump out to an early lead. Seemed like, the offense was really clicking. They were attacking this UNC freshman. Saturday, we get great starting pitching. The game is close. It's like, hey, we're just waiting for the big hit, wait for the big hit, right? Sunday, the opposite effect happens where we get behind and we're sort of playing catch up. We've seen this team catch up before and play from behind, and they're comfortable doing it. Yesterday, we almost did it. We're down 5-4. You start scratching across some runs, but certainly the formula is good starting pitching, attack with the offense. And what I see as a starting pitcher, I know that you preach at every single level, is a shutdown inning, right? Your offense scores a run. It's your job as a pitcher. You got to go put up a zero. And I think that that's where this team really struggles. We see the offense come back, score some runs, walks, base hits, allow the other team to score some runs. And that's such a huge lift and boost for a team if you can, give up runs and get them back right away. Like we do that on offense. The Canes do that on offense. They do a great job of going back and getting runs. But as a pitching staff, you have to really emphasize shutdown inning. You have to shut down the opposing team after you've put up runs. And I just haven't seen enough of that this year yet from that bullpen.
Let's shift to the offense, and we'll go in batting order, right? We'll start with Sear, move on to Cuvée, then talk about Torres. But starting with Blake Sear, in the group chat, Harold Martinez, former great third baseman for the Canes, he said something that, just from the outside seems dead on, which is that as Sear goes, sort of the team goes, his confidence is such a big part of this team and his offense. I was there on Friday. Every single swing he took seemed to fly off the bat. Had 2 home runs, some really loud outs as well. Now we're seeing some consistency with Sear. What are you seeing from Sear now that he's gotten through that early slump?
Yeah, look, I think Harold, you're absolutely right. Harold Martinez put it perfectly. Every swing he takes, it looks like he's trying to hit it off the hex center and out in left field, right? So it's one of those things where he's absolutely right. When you have that super aggressive guy in the lineup who also is a home run threat, it's not like Blake Sear's a slap hitter hitting singles. He's trying to hit the ball. He has bad intentions when he swings the bat. So look, what I see from Blake, we spoke last week, like, oh, Blake is, had been struggling. He hits a couple home runs last week. Like now it's full blown, like Blake Sear's on fire. He's getting pitched to like the Blake Sear of last year, right? So now we see a couple guys in the lineup where you're saying, okay, 2, 3, 4, like these are the guys who can really, really hurt me. And Blake Sear is that catalyst. I mean, look, 4 pitches into the game, he hits one off the scoreboard on Friday night, and like, the team's the UNC's right on their backs, right? They're on their heels, and they're starting pitcher. It's like you hadn't even gotten comfortable yet. You had just tied your spikes. You hadn't even broken a sweat, and you're down 2 runs because Blake Sear hit one off the scoreboard, right? So as a starting pitcher, you have to be you look at a lineup and you say, where can I get my outs? And right now it's not at the top of the Miami Hurricanes lineup. It's not 1 through 4, 1 through 5, because we had Jason Torres batting 5th this weekend. So you look at what the Hurricanes can do offensively to you, and Blake Sear is right in the middle of that mix. He's definitely, the straw that stirs the drink. You look at the energy he brings, he's always jumping around. He's lively. And look, D, when you start a game off with a home run off the scoreboard, like, dude, that dugout is jazzed up and they're on fire. So Blake Sear is that guy for the Hurricanes, baseball club, and I expect this hot streak to continue.
Yeah, look, he saw him in left field as well. So that different look in terms of him playing outfield instead of second base where he played last year, DH where we've seen him mostly this year. Moving on to the guy right behind him, Cuvée. You said it last podcast, they're going to start pitching to him different. We saw that this weekend. I don't know if he had a hit, if he definitely didn't have a huge hit. And I saw some walks, some strikeouts as well. What do you see from Cuvée as he adjusts to a new way of getting pitched to?
Yeah, look, and the book's out on Daniel Cuvée, right? Like his resume speaks for itself already at a very young age. Like he's a guy who has light tower power. He can hit the ball to all fields, and he's the kind of guy that is not afraid to, be pitched to inside. Like nothing really phases him. So he's definitely circled on scouting reports. I said that last week. The evolution now is, okay, I know how they're pitching to me. I know I'm going to get only 1 pitch to hit. I know I'm only going to get 1 fastball in the zone. And it's tough. It's a tough adjustment. And look, these are the ups and downs of a freshman season. This is a guy who's going to learn. He's going to get better. This weekend was definitely, welcome to the ACC type of moment where, again, just similar to last week, they're throwing him a lot of breaking balls, a lot of stuff on the outer half of the plate. They don't want him to get his hands extended, hit the ball out. So look, it's one of those things where I fully expect Daniel Cuvée to break out of this slump, whether it's this weekend, whether it's Tuesday against FIU. Like we're gonna be looking back and saying this mini slump where his average went from 589 to 450. Like it'll be long gone in a couple weeks.
And I said we were going to talk about the order. I skipped somebody. I want to get into him who hit cleanup this past weekend, which is Dorian, right? He's hitting
Dorian, yeah.
The huge home run on Saturday. Obviously, Belen guy, so I had to bring him up. But what have you seen from his development into a guy that really, I think, has probably been the 4th best position player behind the top 3 guys this year, it seems like?
Right. And look, you look at Dorian and from a physical perspective, he doesn't look like a 4th batter, right? A little bit of shorter stature, second base. So it's not the traditional 4th batter in a lineup, but I think what Dorian brings is a ton of experience he looks very calm in all these, tight situations and clutch moments. And we've seen him come up with huge home runs this year. He's had, grand slam against Florida, huge home run against Virginia on Sunday, 3-run homer. And then obviously this walk-off homer against UNC on Saturday night. And I think the cool thing about Dorian is like, he's kind of been one of those guys that's been written off. They've always talked about like, who's going to play second base, who's going to replace Dorian. He's kind of like a cockroach, man. He just sticks around. He grinds. He's one of those guys that I look at, and I know Dorian a little bit personally, and I look at that guy, and I that's a Miami guy, right? He's just a grinder. He plays hard. He's got a lot of passion. He loves the program. His father is a former Miami Hurricane baseball player as well. And look, I think from a nuts and bolts perspective of this lineup, he's one of those guys that probably doesn't get the same attention that a Daniel Cavey, Jason Torres, and Blake Sear, but he can do just as much damage. And we saw that on Saturday night with a huge home run.
Yeah, I like that cockroach blend, guys. We're cockroaches. We find a way. Moving on to number 5, another hero on Saturday, Torres. It's amazing when you look at his numbers because Cuvée gets so much attention and Sear is such a guy coming into the year. But when you look at Torres' numbers, I mean, if you just put it on the paper, he's as good or better than both those guys. So not the guy that looks the part necessarily like Cuvée, just in terms of physique, right? But the results are outstanding. What do you see from Torres?
Well, Torres' home run on Saturday, D, was one of those things where as a pitcher, I was kind of shuddering because it was a 3-0 count and he gets a green light. And it's a fastball in the outer third of the plate, and he hits it was probably the hardest hit ball I've seen this year in terms of at the Hurricanes games. I mean, rocket missile, dead center field, like he got all of that. So as a pitcher, you're thinking to yourself, okay, it's 3-0 count. It's a 1-1, 1-0 game. I'm just going to groove one in there. He's not going to swing. Like we've seen Hurricane teams in the past that have been extremely patient in those situations. The switch has turned, right? Darren Fenster trusts his guys. He says, if you get a good pitch to hit, unleash. And that's something you see at professional levels too. You trust the meat of your order guys. If you get a fastball in that situation, it was like probably 89, 90 mile an hour fastball kind of grooved in there, not thinking anything. All of a sudden you're turning your neck as that ball, shoots right over the center field fence. Like that's the kind of stuff that strikes fear into you as a pitcher and as an entire staff and as you game plan forward. So look, I'm a big Jason Torres fan. I know we talk to Harold a lot. He calls him a Dade County legend. One of the OGs of Dade County, had a tremendous prep career before, going to the University of Miami. He was one of those guys too that we just didn't see a whole lot of last year, right? He was kind of playing behind Yo-Yo at third and CJ Kafis at first base. So he was a dark horse coming in for this team. He started the season batting 7th, has shot his way up through the lineup, batting 4th and 5th, depending on the weekend. And you mentioned his numbers, right? I'm looking at his numbers right now. He's slugging 821, OBP of close to 500. So his OPS is through the roof, 1,300, something like that. So look, man, this guy's got the goods. He protects a Daniel Cavey in this lineup. And as the season wears on, you're going to see Sear, Torres, and Cavey pitch differently. Who else is going to step up? You need the Dorian Gonzalez of the world, Lorenzo Carrier, Jake Kulikowski. Those guys are all going to need to step up as these guys get pitched to differently.
I want to talk about Kulikowski because he's the one you mentioned last podcast. Seems like a lot of things you mentioned the week before kind of play out the next series, right? That was one thing. You mentioned you want to see more Kulikowski. Hits a big home run on Sunday and just really looks like he's starting to find his timing, started off a little slow. Why do you like Kulikowski so much? Why have you been so consistent in saying this guy needs to see more at-bats?
Yeah, look at the meat of our order, right? The 2, 3, 4, Sear, Cavey, Torres, all right-handed batters. You have Dorian that you sprinkle in there sometimes as a cleanup hitter. We need some left-handed pop. We see Scanlon getting more and more at-bats. You see Kulikowski now making his way into the lineup. And the reason why I I thought Kulikowski needed more at-bats was because as a freshman, it's the freshman fall is really difficult, right? You get into University of Miami, you get into a new weight program, you're taking classes, you have study hall, your schedule is just completely thrown off. So you get into the spring, you finally get a chance to breathe, all of a sudden, boom, season starts, you're facing high quality pitching. Like the world is just kind of moving fast. You have to take a breath with some of these freshmen and say, okay, look, first couple weeks, get your feet wet, understand what it's like to play high Division I baseball. Let's get into the ACC slate. And you just need to build these guys up. You got to build up their confidence, get them in situations where they can be successful. Similar to pitching, the hitting is the same way. These guys are going to struggle. They're going to strike out. You look at Jake Kulikowski's average. I'm looking at it right now, 222. Nothing to write home about, right? You don't as an outsider, you see the box score. Why are we playing this guy? But he's a really high prospect from the Tampa area, was a prep superstar. Let's see what we got in this guy. Give him regular at-bats. Let him face lefties and righties. Let him get his, work his way through these struggles. And he gets rewarded on Sunday hitting his first home run. He hit a double too. So it's like, the engine starts rolling a little bit. These guys get more and more comfortable. I fully expect Jake Kulikowski to be a factor, into April and then late May in ACC play.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, 'cause my memory is getting bad as I get older. But I remember Sear was not, he was a little up and down in the
Yeah.
beginning, and then he really heated up towards the end.
Yeah, look, and again, baseball development is not linear. If you expect these guys to come in and have, huge impacts right away, some do. And don't get me wrong, we've seen that from some freshmen. You see guys that are just ready to play, but not everybody develops the same way. Not everybody is exposed to this high level of baseball the same way. You got to give them at bats. You got to trust. You got to give them regular at bats. That's the thing. It's hard to come in off the bench playing once a week, getting a couple at bats here and there. The workers, the hard workers, the guys with high quality, high character guys will reward coaches for letting them play regularly. They put in the work. I'm sure these guys are working hard. We got a beautiful facility, man. We were talking about it the other day when we were sitting in the suite on Friday night. There was rain that was possibly moving into the area, right? And we talked about in the past, when it rained at Miami, we would be throwing underneath the concourse. The pitchers would be throwing, the hitters would be, taking hacks and, underneath the concourse. We didn't have anywhere to go, right? And now they have this beautiful hitting facility that they have access to 24 hours a day. Guys swipe their card, go in there, go hit, get instant data with all the analytics and technology in there. So there's really no excuse anymore. These guys have everything at their fingertips. And I think you'll see these freshmen take advantage of that and their seasons progress and get better as it goes along.
You in the suite, Peter, I saw with the seat, me and the Money family out there in general admission on the bench. But to wrap it up, I'm not going to talk about the weekend series coming up because we don't know what's going to happen with snow. And it seems to me like the real key is these midweeks, right?
Right.
FIU, just like last week with FAU, you knew it's a tricky game. That went the other way. What can you tell me about the FIU game and just what it means and what Miami needs to do to win?
Yeah, look, a crosstown rivalry. And when I was at Miami, we didn't play these games against FIU. I think it's great that they're starting to, the rivalry was renewed, I think, when Gino Damari took over 2018, 2019. So it's a great game for fans of it's really accessible, man. Where else are you going to get a game like this in town, right? It's the best ticket in town. And look, I spoke last week about the midweek games being a total toss-up. We just don't know what the pitching looks like, right? I think, you ask JD and Coach Gutierrez right now, they're probably trying to figure out, break their heads together, how are we going to get 27 outs on Tuesday night, right? So, again, we need to see some positive momentum in these midweek games. They're tough games. I think we've spoken at length about how do you approach a midweek game, and when you don't have a solidified fourth starter, it's tough. I mean, look, I was a midweek guy for a portion of my career, and I knew that I was going to start on midweeks, and it was something that the role I was sort of, moved into. And I think right now this team is just looking for that fourth starter, looking for someone who can give them length in the midweek games. And we have a couple guys, like I said, on the shelf that are making their way back, in terms of health. So as they come back, I expect them to try and figure out if they're one of those guys is a starter and one of those guys can pitch in the midweek. But you got to start winning these games. I know we talked before the podcast about the RPI starting to look much better. The RPI is going to take care of itself if you win your ACC games. What keeps you out of the tournament, unfortunately, is your performance in midweeks. And we've had some instances where, I think end of 2016 or 17 and 18, when Coach Morris's, career was winding down, the team wasn't doing all that well in midweeks. And it was one of the factors that sort of kept them out of the NCAA tournament. So the committee's looking at this kind of stuff. They're looking at RPI. So it starts on Tuesday. It's a great game. Let's see if, we can pack the light, get some Canes fans out there for the crosstown rivalry against FIU.
Man, we'll talk next week. Hopefully we're repeating some of the stuff we've been repeating about the home runs and everything else, but we have a better story to tell about the midweek game. So Javi, man, appreciate you and see you at the light.
Thanks, D. Go Canes.